Hi, my name is Chomin. I'm part of NerdMia. I'm a master's student at the University of Waterloo. I'm a TA as well as a private tutor. Now on this segment of Learning Effectively, I'm going to be talking about how to cram. Now how to cram is something I don't suggest you doing, but more often than not, you do find yourselves at times when you are cramming. And I guess I'll teach you a few tips on how to cram effectively. I don't endorse cramming, but if you're in this difficult situation, you're probably screwed, and you probably need a hand or two in getting yourself out of this mess. So cramming is a lot different than normal studying, okay? Now in cramming, you have no time, and you have a lot of material to cover in a very short amount of period of time. You're under pressure. So essentially what you need to do is you need to set a goal. And now if your goal is acing the test, you're either a genius or you have unrealistic expectations. When you cram, don't expect to get 100% because that's just unrealistic. When you cram, expect about 70%, 80%. That's what you cram for. But when people cram, they actually cram as though they're going to get 100% because they learn everything, you know. But often or not, these people start failing, you know, or they get 60s or low 50s. It's because they're not cramming the proper way. So what's the proper way of cramming, child? Well, first, to do cramming effectively, you need to follow 4 of these things. You need to delete material, you need to learn, you need to summarize, and you need to output. And I will tell you exactly how much time you should be spending on each and the reason why you need to do each. Now the first part is called deletion. Now deletion is a very dangerous thing to do when it comes to learning, because if you delete the wrong things, you're screwed. Well, it also takes a lot of skill, but with a bit of intellectual thinking, a bit of logic, you can actually delete the right materials that are on the test. Now the reason why I say deletion is because on a test or exam, especially in university, what you'll start finding is that your professor does not have time to test you on every single nifty thing that he has ever taught. In fact, only about 40% or 50% of the things he talked about ever in lectures actually show up on the exams, because you only have 2 hours on the exam, so he can't test you on basically everything. And that's why you can probably delete things, the right things, and still be able to pull off an 80 and sometimes even a 90. Now, deletion is a lot different than a summary, okay? A summary is basically like this. A summary is you have suppose there's a tree, okay? A summary is basically a tree without the leaves. That's a summary. That's all the branches are still intact, right? A deletion is essentially you chop off a branch. That's a deletion. You're making this tree smaller, okay? Now, deletion is one great way to do deletion is that what I usually do is that you list off all the different topics in your course that you're learning, and then what you do is you ask yourself, okay, which one of these topics are important? And in other segments I've mentioned before, you can tell which topics are important by 1, how much your professor talks about it, how often it comes up and its relationship with other topics, and 3, how much material is underneath that topic, okay? So what you need to do is you need to take a red pen, and cross out all the topics which barely talked about, okay? You need to cross them out and throw them out. Topics, so topics with no information, topics where you probably only mentioned them once in class, okay? Cross them out. Don't look at them ever again. And that's completion. And this process should take about, 5 to 10% of your time that you spend for cramming. So you delete, essentially you forget that this material was ever presented to you. Okay, so once you do the completion properly and correctly, what you have left is only about 70 to 80% of the full course material. Okay, all of the course material. So you have just shaved off a great deal of your course load, and obviously you're not going to get 100% because you just threw away 20% of the actual full course. The next step is essentially learning. And by learning, I don't mean just sitting there and reading things or doing all of it. What learning means is that what you do is you're going to spend about 15% of your total cramming study time learning only 50% of your course material really well, so that you pass, And by very well, I mean you learn it inside out. Like you can close your eyes and recite lines and stuff. That's how well you should be learning stuff. And then the other 30% depends on how much time you have. Then you learn the other 30%. It's cramming. This is what you have to do. Now, the next step what you need to do is you need to summarize what you've just learned. And by summary, I mean you need to categorize the important topics, and then what you do is you put its corresponding details underneath each topic. So the last and perhaps the most important stage when it comes to cramming is outputting. Okay, and in fact, about 40 to 50% of your time in this cramming study session should be spent on outputting, and you can output either by lecturing yourself, writing down notes, or talking to your friends, or whatnot. Now, the reason why you need to output is because you will be able to spot missing details that you would otherwise have missed. And when you spot these missing details, you can go back to your notes and fill them in, essentially. Now, the key thing is that to remember is that when you're learning material and outputting them, is to not really remember like really detailed stuff like dates or numerical values, and which might cause your brain to essentially explode with information. So essentially, and for those things that if you do want to learn them, what I suggest is that you write them on a piece of paper, and what you do is you bring that piece of paper on the test, and just before your exam, you sit there, you memorize it all, and the moment you're on the test, you write them all on the back of a sheet of paper. And that way, this is the easiest way. What happens is that information, this detailed information that would otherwise destroy your long-term memory, gets put in short-term memory, and immediately before the test gets put on a blank sheet of paper. And it's probably the easiest way to remember these detailed information, and this is what I do. So essentially, to summarize everything, a good cram focuses on knowing less material, but knowing it well. So you will pass with 70 and 80%, and trust me, if you cram properly, you can easily pull off 70 and 80%. And I've crammed before sometimes, and I've been able to pull off 90s, and I'm not that smart.